Okay. Wait, last name, how do you say?
Boris.
Boris?
Yeah, Boris.
Okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay. Hey everyone, I'm Kristin Messerli, and I am so excited to be here with Raquel Borras. Raquel, I have been meaning to chat with you for a really long time. Always seen your videos on LinkedIn, and you're just always just a bright, shining face. And then one day I saw a really beautiful, authentic video that you shared on mental health awareness, and I just wanted to interview you and chat a little bit more about it. So thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you. So I have to share with you, I don't think I've ever shared with you that I've kind of been like a fangirl of yours for a while now. We've never met. I've seen you kind of in the mortgage circuit, and I've always admired you and really respected you. And so when you reached out to me, and actually reached out to me about mental health awareness, I was shocked, but also at the same time, like so excited because I've been wanting to meet you for so long. So this is an honor. So thank you.
Fun. Well, I love that this is what brought us together. So
Yes.
so for those that haven't seen the video, can you share a little bit about just an overview of what that was and why you shared it?
Yes. So last year, I was actually at the NAMBA conference, the national conference, and I was talking to Eddie Perez, who's the president of Equity Prime Mortgage, and we were discussing, we were just hanging out talking, and we weren't talking business, we were talking about our families, and it came up that he had a family member that had suffered from mental health issues, and unfortunately the aunt had taken her life, and so they had essentially adopted his cousins. And then so I naturally opened up about my story about suffering with depression and having attempted suicide actually in college. And so we were just talking, and he's like, Raquel, I'm really big on breaking the stigma and changing the narrative. Well, that was in March or April. Well, come May is Mental Health Awareness Month, and he had done a video on LinkedIn. I don't know if he tagged me or if I just happened to see it, but he was talking about how, hey, we need to break the stigma. And so I thought, after he shared that story, I thought, oh my gosh, well, here's someone like me who I put out this persona, which I am a very happy person. I'm not faking it, but I'm sure people just assume that I've lived a very charmed life and everything's great. And I go, and that's the problem, is everyone assumes that, what they put out there, that's reality, and that's not the case. And so I thought, okay, well, I have a platform. People actually follow me on LinkedIn. I have a large audience. I said, I'm someone that needs to start talking about it. And so I remember having a lot of anxiety leading up to that video, because I just got in front of my window. I pulled out my camera and I thought, okay, this is gonna be a one take. Because a lot of times I do kind of, when I do videos, I'll do like several takes. And I'm like, this one I have to do it in one take. It has to just be from the heart. So I pressed play and I said, okay, here goes. Like, I'm going to break the silence, because I've never really spoken about it. So it's not like something that I am very vocal and then I just thought, oh, I'm going to share on LinkedIn. This is something that like I just don't talk about. So to share it on LinkedIn was a pretty big deal. So yeah, I went ahead, and I think it was like 6 minutes long. I did tear up a little bit. And I just, posted it. And it's amazing how within seconds, I started getting phone calls, text messages, and they were all like, wow, you're so brave. I didn't know this about you. Like, oh my gosh, like, thank you for sharing. It was so overwhelming in a really positive way, because I also thought, crap, it's LinkedIn. People are going to be like, take this over to Facebook, take this somewhere else. This doesn't belong on this platform, right? It could have essentially gone like really bad. And no, it was the complete opposite. And it surprised me, but it also made me realize that people are craving vulnerability. They're craving to hear what really is going on behind closed doors. And so that just kind of, once I opened those floodgates, there was essentially no going back. Mm-hmm. And so, yeah, that's kind of how it all started.
Well, it was so inspiring to me. And I think it is one of those things that, like, mental health is a difficult thing to talk about. And, we were talking right before starting this video that it's something that can easily feel like, oh, look what this awful thing I went through. But you framed it in a way that was like, hey, I want to be real with you and say, like, if anyone else experiences these things, it's okay, you know? And I think that everyone, especially, I mean, right now we're shooting this during a pandemic, and everyone has at least some level of anxiety at some point. You know, people are experiencing this in a lot of different ways, but I am noticing more people having it like starting to come out, whether or not they are even aware of it. And I think having that kind of vulnerability and realizing our work and home life have become so integrated, you know, so, you know, keeping all work on LinkedIn or keeping all work in the box that you go to for work is no longer really that, that accessible. And so I just, yeah, I think you crossed that line in a way that was really, not just authentic, but also done in a way that doesn't have any shame, and it doesn't, you know, it opens the door to conversations. And so, yeah, I just thought you did a really great job with that.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it, because it was really scary. I'm not gonna lie. And but at the same time, I have no shame anymore. That's the beauty of it. That it was so cathartic for me, and is so therapeutic for myself, because, like you said, I realized, not that I thought I was alone, and no way to ever feel that way, but it just made me realize like how many people are feeling the same, or have felt the same, or have children that feel the same. I've had a couple people reach out to me, and they were talking about their kids, and I appreciate that, because I was able to come at them as someone that I was a teenager when that all went down. Towards, I don't remember, it was such a fog. I think I might have been 19, 20. I don't remember. So yeah, it really is like all a blur to me. But to be able to at least say, hey, this is how my parents dealt with it. It wasn't the best way. Can, you know, as a parent, do me a favor. Like, it was almost like, you know what I mean? Can you show them love? Can you accept them for what they're feeling? Like, don't dismiss their, you know, their thoughts, or, all that stuff. So it was nice to be able to help people in so many different ways from it. And that's why I keep doing it. Because I tell people all the time, I'm like, if you can share your story and help one person, I promise it's worth it. It's worth that feeling awful that you're being vulnerable or transparent. Because that was another thing too, is I didn't know how to be vulnerable. I struggle with vulnerability my entire life. Most people do, but I came from a family where you don't share stuff. You don't cry. You don't, all of that stuff. So for me now, I feel comfortable with being vulnerable as well. Mm-hmm. It's such I made such an evolution. There was such a journey and evolution of myself that it's like, I want others to experience that. I think that's what that is. That's why I keep talking about it, because I want to be like people, like, I feel so good about it. Like, I want you guys to feel the same way, where it's okay to talk about it, where you're so like, just, you accept who you are, and you're so comfortable with it that once you put yourself out there, it doesn't matter what other people think anymore. And I think that's another reason why mental health is such an issue, is because we're so, we're on social media all the time. We're constantly comparing ourselves to others. We're constantly seeing what other people are doing. I mean, shoot, even during this pandemic, I was saying how that's creating a whole level of anxiety and pressure too, because you have these people that, yes, they're at home, but they're doing all their workouts. They're eating healthy. They're learning a third language. They're learning to, they're spending all this quality time with their kids that they couldn't before, and they're sharing it, which is fine. But it's like, you also have to understand there's the other side of that. There's people that are still in their PJs, binge watching Netflix all day long, eating out of, tub, of ice cream, but that's how they're coping with it. And that's okay. But if they're seeing, all these other people being so productive and seem like it's not phasing them, then it makes them feel even worse, So then that's why I try to also be like, hey, yeah, I might be coping okay, but I have my moments. Like, I'm very honest where I say there's days where I'll be in bed all day long. Mm-hmm. Like, I literally will not leave my bed, maybe just use the bathroom, but I allow that. I allow myself grace now. Like, you know what, Raquel, if that's what you need in that moment, then do it. It's okay. Tomorrow, next day. Like yesterday, I was in my PJs all day, hadn't showered. It's fine. Today, I'm in a blazer. I put on makeup for you. Blow dry my hair, and it's you're gonna have like those ups and those downs, and you're gonna have not everything's gonna be perfect. And I think that's why it's so important for us to share those imperfections, because then I think mentally, then maybe we won't be so inclined to get, stuck, caught up in here and thinking, oh my gosh, I should be doing this, I should be that, the pressure, the comparison, because that really feeds into a lot of mental health issues.
Totally. I think that's so true. And I think it is really important that we accept that each of us have different energy levels. We have different areas. Like mental health is not something that can fit in a box, and it's not as much as we try to put even a diagnosis on something, it's all very blurry, and so I think being able to realize like each of us might have days more frequently that are completely, it's quarantine is really hard for you, or the pandemic is just getting to, or just general life has its ups and downs, but everyone experiences those differently, and being able to accept that and not compare yourself with others is, I think, one of the most important things. Like even for me, I've been through a lot of ups and downs in my mental health, and I think now I still have those, but they don't scare me so much because I've accepted them, so it's like, okay, yeah, here's another down. I'm just gonna, take a bath and like do the things that make me feel good. And it's okay that I'm not running around like I was, yesterday. That's just like how I am, so I think that acceptance is really key. But I also think, for you to share on that, I think you had a lot of self-acceptance in order to do that, and I think sometimes it can feel, I think you're right that it's important that all of us are more vulnerable, but did you feel like you got to a place of healing in order to, and then have been able to share beyond that? Like how would you say, I guess, for someone that maybe wants to bring mental health awareness to their workplace or to their communities, is this something that you would say like was a process for you, or do you think it's just best to be as open as possible?
It was definitely a process. Like I truly believe that you have to be comfortable. It has to be something that's coming in a place where you're ready, right? Because it is really scary to open up in those ways, and people are going to judge. Like naturally, people judge. So for me, I'm going to be 45 this year. I mean, I've been married, had children, been divorced, starting my own business. So for me, it's all of those things coming together have allowed me to kind of accept who I am. And so it's a tough one, because in no way do I ever want to tell someone like, oh, you have to do this, or you have to share your story, or that's the only way people are going to get better. No. I mean, we're all so unique. We're all so different. So that's why, like, even with you said, mental health has so many different faces to it. There's so many different sides to it. Some people, suffer like to the extreme, and then there's others that just have like they get into their funks. I just think if we could just change the narrative though, and just not make people feel guilty if they do share their story, or not, feel shame, then I think that's where it's going to help. Because I think that's the problem, is it's all based on just that shame. I mean, that's why I never shared anything. And I felt shame and I felt guilty, because, there's a lot of people that look at a suicide as a selfish act. Like, you're being selfish. You are not thinking about others. But let me tell you, for someone who's been in the darkest of places, you're not thinking about anybody. You're not even thinking about yourself, because you want to end your life. You don't even care. Like, so for, you know what I mean? So it's like, so for people to be like, oh, that's so selfish. It's also, hey, unless you walk in someone else's shoes, you can't really judge.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Because I'm sure there's plenty of people that are like, I mean, my son, he thinks it was almost like a cop-out to kind of, drop out of school and kind of, go. Everyone has their different ways of thinking, and he's 19.
And so, experienced it. I mean, my best friend in high school did commit suicide. And at the time, I was so angry, like the way that I experienced that was, but it's where I was in life and how everyone like responds to things differently. But I think what's so important through all of this, and even going back to how you're handling the pandemic and things like that, like we have to understand that someone experiences things differently than us. And that's such a basic concept, but we don't act it out. And so, you know, in our day-to-day lives, and especially around mental health, it's so easy to say like, okay, well, just get out of bed, you know, like
I know.
do your shit, you know, and then it's like,
Snap
no,
out of it. You know what I mean? Like even my mom, and that's why for me it was really difficult because my mom does not understand mental illness. She doesn't understand depression. She doesn't get it because she's always been a very happy person. Like knock on wood, I've never seen her sick or I've never seen her in bed with a cold. Like she's just that type of person. So for her to see her children suffer, she just didn't understand. So it was like very hard for her to be very empathetic and compassionate towards us. And I'm not trying to like say she was mean. No, it's just, she just didn't understand. And to this day, it's still really difficult, but at least we can talk about it. And we can talk about it because that video that I put on LinkedIn, I purposely put it on LinkedIn because my family and my friends, close friends, they're not on LinkedIn. They're all on Facebook and Instagram. So I still had shame. And I did a video after that thing saying, I admitted right after, I was like, guys, I have something to admit to you guys. I'm a 44-year-old woman, or I was 43 at the time, and I'm still scared of my parents and what they're going to think.
yeah.
And so my mom finally came out to visit that summer. And I remember we were sitting on my couch and I was like, Mom, I have to tell you something. And she's like, what? I was like, so I talked about what happened to me years ago and I talked about it on LinkedIn and I have like thousands of people that follow me. And I needed to tell you that. And I was like scared what you were going to think. And we started crying. And at the end of the conversation, she was just like, I'm so proud of you. And it was like such a weight lifted too. And I don't know if I had the conversation with my dad, to be honest, I don't remember. But yeah, I still was like, felt badly for my parents because, you know, like they were still kind of in denial about it. Like they don't talk about it. They're not open about having kids that, you know, because I still have family members, you know, that suffers. It wasn't just me. And so that's the problem is like, there's still that whole guilt, judging.
Yeah, there's also so much stigma around mental health, even still today, and it's grown so. I mean, that's gotten so much better over recent years. But thinking about how past generations dealt with mental illness, I know. I mean, my poor grandmother, it was either go to the mental institution or get locked in a closet for a couple days, you know, and that was like how things were dealt with. And it was just
my grandmother, she was schizophrenic. She like went missing and I think she ended up in the mental institution. And then my dad suffered, he never had friends over because my grandmother's schizophrenia was so bad, she was constantly paranoid. So nobody could come over because she felt like and so my dad, his upbringing was definitely shaped by that. Mm-hmm. But he doesn't talk about it. Like he rarely ever talks about it, you know,
there is
like so deep wounded, you know, like because of it. So it's a tough one. And I just hope that, you know, now that I've partnered up with the Perfectly Perfect campaign, I was talking to the founder and I was just saying, you know, we really need to figure out a way to tap into the younger demographic because that's where we have to tap into because, you know, they're the ones that are growing up with social media and they're the ones that are comparing themselves even more so. And the one, you know, with the Instagram and the filters and everything's perfect and everything's great. I was like, that's where, you know, a lot of the focus needs to be for them to feel okay. Cause I already have my kids, my son is 19, my daughter is 16 now. I want to say at age 16, we already went to a funeral of a colleague's son who committed suicide. My daughter already knew people in 8th grade who committed suicide. So the fact that here I have my kids, like that wasn't stuff that I was dealing with at that age, you know? And so it's so important, just, I guess, maybe because I'm a mom of 2 teenagers and I feel so strongly about it, you know, right now. But yeah, I definitely want to tap into the younger generations. And I want to be like, all right, this is where you guys need to really like, but it's a tough one because they're young. They still, that's where they think they do something wrong. It's videotaped. It's, you know, on camera. Everyone sees it. And then they think my world is over. Like there's no going back for them. They think like, if someone sees something that I did, like where do I go from here? And then unfortunately, that's where they feel like they need to take their lives because they don't see that it's going to pass. like we've all been through stuff, but
Mhm.
they just don't have that mental capacity to understand that.
Well, and this is actually where I think coming out, speaking out about mental health awareness is so important, because the more that people can see someone got past something,
Yeah.
and I mean, I hate to even frame it that way, but because like I carry my mental illness burdens, I guess. I probably will all through my life, but I have gotten past the point of like the worst of it, and I think the more that people can see, I was talking with a colleague yesterday who was going through a very, very low point in her life. And I thought, if I can say, yeah, like I know what that feels like, or I've at least experienced something similar, and you can get past it. And I talked through how I built different coping skills and things like that. And I think that gives someone hope. And I know that, the more people can see, okay, yeah, this isn't actually the end of my life. Like I can't imagine growing up with social media. That sounds just absolutely
Yeah.
horrible. But the more that they can see life moves on, and it's not just me that has experienced this type of thing, the more that gives people hope and connection. And whether they're young or isolated through the pandemic and things like that, I think that really helps to build a sense of community. And I think really isolation is one of the worst things for mental health, which is a huge,
Yeah.
huge issue in the pandemic as well. So,
Yeah. No, I agree. No, I agree, where I think more and more, that's why I want to eventually be able to speak to high schools, because I want to be a physical example of someone that has been there, has experienced certain things, but was able to manage to get to the other side and now I'm trying to help others, right? So it's like for them, because unfortunately, a lot of people, when they do speak, it's someone that it was a family member of theirs that did take their lives.
mhm.
And it's like, okay, but they took their life, not, you know what I mean? Like if you
Yeah.
can have someone that was up there that tried to take their life and didn't, but managed to get to the other side, then I think that can be very powerful as well, because you do see, you have like a physical example of someone.
Yeah.
So that's why I tell people, the more that we can share our stories and show how we cope, and that it's it's going to be okay. Like there is a light at the end of the tunnel. Then hopefully more and more people will understand that, okay, all right, if these people can get through it, then I should be able to as well.
Yeah, yeah. And that's, the good of social media, like using social media for stronger connection and community, that I think is a really big opportunity for us to be able to, to share that vulnerability and inspire other people. So, so speaking of, why don't you share just briefly on the is it the Imperfectly Perfect
Yeah,
campaign?
it's funny how some people think it's perfectly imperfect.
Yeah, I started to say that. Yeah.
So it's Imperfectly Perfect campaign. It's actually a global campaign. It's technically out of Australia right now. So Glenn Marsden and I were introduced to each other through a mutual friend, through my mentor. And he actually had a friend take his life last year, and he left behind a wife and I think a 2-year-old son. And what struck him the most was that his friends seemed like everything was great. Everything was perfect on social media. Like there was no sign of anything, being wrong. So for him, it was even more of a shock. And so he's like, okay, I got to figure out a way to bring mental health awareness. And so it's oddly enough, it turns out that he had suffered from major body dysmorphia, like major body dysmorphia. He's been in the fitness industry for years. And so he's like, all right, what can I do? Well, he is a photographer. And in Australia, within the fitness industry, he has friends that are trainers that train celebrities, public figures in Australia. And so he just started asking, can I capture just kind of like the rawness of people's faces, like in their emotion with no makeup on, like, to show how you have a celebrity where on social media, they're with their ball gowns on the red carpet, but then behind the scenes, this is what they're experiencing as well. And so he started taking photographs, and they're amazing. So he started the campaign with photography, and now he has, a bunch of people on board, and now it's gone global, where now it's like gone over to the US. And yeah, he's just like everybody else, destigmatize, change the narrative, but also we're working right now as a team to figure out, different programs and what we can do. Cause obviously we want it to, there to be substance behind it, right? Cause, you can have a campaign, you can have a nonprofit that, there could be a lot of fluff, but then, the nitty gritty part of like, let's really change the narrative. So we're working on some things because it is fairly new. He just started the campaign, I want to say like 17 months ago, and for it to go global in that short amount of time is fantastic. So I'm heading up his brand strategy and marketing. And so it's like in the beginning stages, which is really cool. I love being a part of something that's new, that we're just putting our brains together, trying to figure out ways to do and be different, right? Because there are a lot of organizations out there, not saying that some are bad or some, are better than others. It's just, it's just trying to do it differently so that you do stand out and that hopefully people will pay attention. So we'll see, but I just feel so blessed and so fortunate to be able to have something I'm passionate about and be able to actually work on it and do it with, the fact that I do personal branding as my business, and then to be able to bring those two together. It really is like a dream come true for me. And then eventually, hopefully it'll go to LA and I can go back to California, which is even better, close to my family and friends. Yes. So yeah, it's all, it's just interesting how all of this has just unraveled. And that's why I tell people all the time, like, trust the journey and the process, all the stuff that you're going through, the good, the bad, it's part of the journey. That's your life. Like, that's how it's supposed to unfold. And for the longest time, I didn't understand that. Like, I didn't understand the bad, messy stuff of life. I'm like, why am I experiencing that? And now I'm like, oh, you have to experience that. You have to be able to go through different things. And so that's why, once again, it's like, if we can, be accepting of the fact that our lives are messy, they're not perfect, and that's okay. That's what makes life, then I think we're going to be much better. It's just getting to that point where we can all think that way.
Yeah, no, that is beautiful. And I think that gets into how it seems like you approach personal branding. So I think it's interesting for you to be, talking on mental health type stuff and also be a personal brand strategist, because you do think of that as like this perfection kind of facade that you put out there, but you're all about authenticity and really vulnerability through your personal brand.
Yeah, I mean, that's what I try to do, is because everyone's like, oh, personal brand, what does this mean? I'm like, I just think it means it's just figuring out who you truly are, and then being able to translate that out to the world, through your social media, through what you're doing, in your business. Because at the end of the day, like, everyone keeps saying people want to do business with the, people they know, like, and trust. And that's even more so now, I believe. Like, I believe the days of, pitching your business or doing the sales pitches or just the cold calling, that's all over with. Yeah. People are like, I want to know who you are first, and then, we can talk business. Even with the brands right now, with everything going on with the pandemic, I mean, some of the brands, the way that they're doing their advertising, their commercials, and the way they're approaching it, it's like make or break for a lot of them, because a lot of them are doing it in a way where people are like, oh, that was so insensitive, or I just didn't connect with that. And then people are like, yeah, done with that brand. Or the opposite, where you have brands where they're doing it in such a beautiful way that people are like, you know what? Like, wow, like, I really feel that they are helping, that they are giving back, that these companies are, instead of it being just a facade. It was funny. Someone posted a video on YouTube about brands, and it was basically, what's the term where you're mocking? It's darn it. Well, yeah, where it's essentially a joke. It's like an SNL skit almost. And so it was talking about how, like, oh, we care about you and we this, but we want you to buy our product, and we're going to pretend that we are going to, that we're, doing this or that. But it's true, right? Like, where you do find where a lot of it's about the money for some people. So it's the same thing with your personal brand, if you will. Like, it has to be true to who you are. That's why I call my business True to You Branding, because I'm not here to tell you like, Kristin, this is what your personal brand should be like. No, it's Kristin, who are you? Who is your true you? And let's go ahead and let the world know. And let's do it in a way that is genuine, sincere, that people can connect with and resonate with. And some people are going to connect and some people aren't. That's another thing too, is that I tell people all the time, like, hey, not everyone's going to be your audience. Not everyone's going to be your client, and that's okay as well. Like, I think we try to be everything to everyone. Yeah. And we can't. And I've accepted that with myself too. Like, I'm not everybody's cup of tea. Like, I might be a little too much. I might be, some people might not take me too seriously. I mean, I did a Facebook Live with a friend the other day, and I had a glass of wine. It was a Friday night. I was in a baseball cap. It was 9:30 Friday night. He asked me to do a LinkedIn Facebook Live, and I had have a glass of wine, and this woman, and I'm very, I'm just me. And this person took it as me being unprofessional, as me being a drunk, like I was an embarrassment. And it just, I was like, oh gosh, right? Like, I try not to take it personally, but I thought, okay. So then I went back and I rewatched it, because I was like, well, maybe I didn't come across very professional, even though, once again, it was a Friday night at 9:30, like just talking whatever on Facebook Live. And then I just kind of like brushed it off. But, it's like, it's amazing how I could be like, yeah, I'm super confident with myself and this is who I am. But then all it takes is one person to call you out on some stuff, and you're thinking like, oh geez. So yeah, that part is still difficult.
Yeah, no, that's a good
thing. You're honest with people.
To bring into this, because I think, as much as it's so important to be authentic and represent yourself and be confident in that, you have to know just, that, yeah, you're not everyone's cup of tea. Yeah. You're going to get heat from people. And especially, the more that you are standing out, like you're not falling into exactly the way everyone lives their life, or the way that, whatever. Some people aren't going to like that. And it's hard, but I think the more that you develop kind of a thicker skin around that, you also build confidence in yourself, and you're like, screw you if you don't.
Yeah, like, I don't know if did you see the video I did, I think like 2 days ago when I got back from the beach?
No.
Okay, so that video I did 2 days ago. I just gotten back from the beach. I'd gone in the shower. I got out of the shower, like I let my hair air dry if I'm not going anywhere. So no makeup, I let my hair air dry. And I wanted to talk about like the fact that I had to unplug for like the last 4 days, and what I'm learning, and how, and once again about mental health. And I just got on the camera, first take, no editing, no filter, no nothing. Like, and after that video, I cannot tell you how I almost felt like it was almost like a sense of euphoria. And the reason why I say that is because here I put out a video that you couldn't, I said, you can't get any more unfiltered than this. I mean, you really couldn't. The fact that I was no makeup, wet hair, first take. And the fact that I didn't care, I put it out there, I felt so good, because that was me. And I was okay with it. And I think that's essentially like, I want everyone else to be able to feel that. I think that's what it is. I think that's why I do a lot of what I do, is because I'm like, people, I can't tell you how great it feels to be able to be you and have people accept you. Like, no trying hard to be this, to be that. Like, it's so liberating. It really is. And I think even more than that video that I did of talking about mental health, I think that video in particular is my favorite so far.
The video on mental health, or the one on?
The one I just did 2 days ago. Because it really, like,
it's like you
can't get any more like stripped down than that, like when you're doing a video, because everyone talks about like, oh, well, my video production, or what if I don't look right, or what if I don't sound right.
Yeah,
that right there is an example of like, hey folks,
yeah,
you have something good to say. And I felt like I had something of value to say. I was talking about how what I have learned, and how we are kind of, realizing that there is a new breed of people that are kind of arising from all of this, and that breed of people that are showing like the real and rawness of life and the messy part of it. Like, I was talking about how, for instance, Amy Schumer, she and her husband's a chef. They now have a show on Food Network it's like a cooking show essentially during the pandemic from their kitchen. And it's her nanny video, like filming it. They're just in their sweats. She's got no makeup on, hair, but like there's no production. And the kitchen is their kitchen. It's not like a fake Martha Stewart, Rachel Ray kitchen where everything's perfect. It's a mess. The dog's in the corner chewing up on something. Then eventually their son wakes up. He's in a baby Bjorn. The meal comes out not looking great. I'm sure it came out like really yummy. It was like sliders and but she didn't know how to do the processor. But I was like, this is brilliant. Like, this is what it should be like. Right. And so it just made me happy to see that we're just showing like behind the scenes, like you knew that that's exactly how it goes down. Like there was no production done. There was nothing different. Like they were in their element and I thought it was, I loved it. And so I feel like that more of that's going to be happening, and that's what is needed so that we sit there and go, oh my gosh, like her slider came out really crappy. Like mine do too. Like you can't figure out the food processor, and here she's a big celebrity. And if you didn't know she was a celebrity, you would have thought she was like anybody else.
Yeah, the feeling of, me too, is this like amazing connecting point that I think is becoming more prominent on social media, or at least in media generally. But I think we're even seeing it in our Zoom calls. We were talking about that, like, at the beginning of the pandemic, everyone still put on suits, and some people still do, and that's totally cool. But I notice more and more of the Zoom calls, everyone's just like in their sweats or whatever, and just showing up and
just working out, like kids are running in the background, or wasn't it Clay Collins? Is it Clay Collins from Housing Wire? Clayton, So I think it was actually funny because it was like his first like real Zoom call. I think it was something that had to do with Housing Wire. It was like a bunch of people on there. And I think what happened was his dog ran in the house with a squirrel in his mouth. And his wife is like yelling at the dog in the background. It's in the first 20 seconds. And I'm sure he was like mortified, but I thought this is what it's all about, right? Because what happens is I'm sure people see like, ooh, it's CEO of Housing Wire, this and that. But in that moment, it's suddenly like all of that just fizzles. It doesn't matter, because then the people that are watching it are probably laughing. They're probably thinking, like, oh my gosh, like he must be so embarrassed. And so then automatically there's like that connection there. And so it strips away the titles. It strips away all of this of like where that meeting probably would have been done in person before, maybe in a conference room, maybe everyone all dressed up, and it would have been a very different vibe. And so with that, I feel like so much of that is happening to where people are just like starting to feel so much more comfortable and connected with people that they probably hadn't with before. And I hope that continues coming out of this. I hope that the teams of people, the coworkers, the people that are, seeing the CEO in a certain level, which obviously you still respect. There's still boundaries. Like this doesn't mean like it's, feast or famine, like, woo, everyone gone wild. It's like, no, there's still the respect, there's still the boundaries, but it's not so much of like a pedestal. Like
there's a dose of reality here.
Yeah.
Definitely. Well, I thank you so much for joining today. I think this is such an important conversation for everyone, no matter what time in life, but especially during the pandemic. And I want to encourage everyone to really be real with yourself about how you're feeling, and share with others whenever you need support, and be okay with however that is expressed and however you're experiencing it. So Raquel, any last words on mental health awareness or the campaign or anything else you want to share?
Well, if you want to follow the campaign, they're on Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter, and it's Imperfectly Perfect Campaign. It's all the same across. We have a lot of exciting stuff. So if you want to get involved, like you can, reach out to us on the campaign, just message anyone, you know, in those social media platforms. But, you know, just as far as mental health awareness, like, let's just keep talking about it, just because the more we talk about it, you know, the less stigma there should be, and just changing that narrative. You know, it's a process, baby steps. You know, obviously I understand it's not going to happen overnight, but if we can start having these type of conversations, like Kristin, someone like you, where I looked at you in a certain way, I had no idea. It wasn't until you reached out to me and you shared a little bit about yourself in that text where I was like, wow, like the fact that we're connected on a totally different level because of it, like that to me is so powerful.
Yeah.
Just imagine how others can connect on that level and how powerful it can be.
Definitely. Well, thank you so much for starting that conversation and for making this effort to change the narrative.
Thanks, Kristin.